This, I do have this, and I love it, but I'm so grateful. Would you write in it? Oh. To my younger brother, cheeky beast. Because I'm going to be 60 and he's 61, so he pulls rank mercilessly. Thank you. I will really cherish this copy. Ah. If you don't know the Pirkei Avot, it is such an astonishing collection, and I'm sure that Rami's is by far the best and most luminous translation. Wisdom of the Jewish Sages. 10%, okay? That's the wisdom of the Jewish sages right there. We've had a deal for a long time, thank God. I'm very, very touched by this wonderful award. It means a huge amount to me because the work of universal interfaith is so important, especially from the mystical angle. My great teacher, actually, to call him a teacher is just too small. My beloved, I can't imagine what I would have been without him. Father Bede Griffiths, Bede, beloved Bede, used to illustrate the whole secret of interfaith very simply. Because being a great, great master, he talked in totally lucid ways which made the complete truths available to anybody who could listen. Amazing human being. If you haven't met the work of Father Bede Griffiths yet, do yourself a favor and buy the book called The One Light, which was edited by Bruno Barnhart and which has the collections from all of his works and from some of the interviews that we did together. And Bede used to say, well, it's like this, you know. So here is Christianity, and here is Buddhism, and they seem very far apart, and here's Hinduism, here are the indigenous tribes, and here is everything else, Islam and everything. They're all different up there. But as you go to the center of the palm, as you go to the experience of the non-dual ground, that's where they all meet. And the important thing for all of us is to have the direct experience of that ground, beyond concept and beyond dogma, so that we can be given the key to understand without effort all the different expressions of that ground. They do not have to merge, and they must not merge into each other, just as it would be a complete disaster if there was only one cuisine. Imagine if you had to eat Turkish cuisine only for the whole of your life. There are many, many cuisines, but they're all cooking, aren't they? Many ways of understanding and approaching the source, all streaming from the source. Why can't people get this? It is so simple and so obvious and so insane that the divine would only create one way to God. And I really believe that actually everybody, every single person, is their own unique path. Because we're all so different, and yet we're all united at the first fundamental level as expressions of the divine self. This is the kind of mystical literacy that the world needs now. Because if we all knew that and all lived from that, then we would be endlessly learning marvelous secrets from each other and be refining each other with our own search, right? And there would be a massive spiritual party going on instead of this dreadful, dreary, battering war, which is one of the factors that is killing the planet. One of the great shadows. Speaking about the shadow, we have something very sacred here with us. We have in that basket resting on purple, which is the color of divine love at its highest level and healing, there is the black snake. And we're about to explore the shadow. So, here is the shadow, lying on a bed of divine love, with a candle lit in front of it. So I hope you can take the wonderful significance of that in. I'd like to begin by just asking three of you who haven't spoken yet to tell me how you are. How are you at this moment in our journey together? How are you? What is happening to you? Don't be shy and don't be passive.
Reinforced.
And what does that mean? Stand up, sir.
Reinforced.
And what does it mean for you to be reinforced like that?
I think we live with a lot of doubt, or I do.
Oh God,
And,
yes.
It's nice to find a place where my thoughts are recognized and idealized from a source outside of myself.
So they're mirrored back to you. What you know and what you feel is being mirrored back to you in a way that satisfies you and reinforces you.
And that being part of me and part of everyone in the room. And this part of me, I'm very familiar with. This part of me, I'm familiar with, but as it is together, as a triad, a triangle, whatever,
How wonderful.
makes me feel as though I'm in the right place at the right time.
Oh, thank you.
With the right thoughts, with the right people.
It's great.
So, reinforced.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful way of expressing it. Thank you. What a gift. Anybody else, please? Yes, madam. Scared shitless. I don't blame you. But as you sit with that fear, what happens to you?
I think I'm still resisting that the full manifestation of what that is. I mean, because of confusion.
Yes.
And, you know, what does that mean that life is going to look like? You know,
Nobody has the slightest idea. So don't worry about what it's going to look like. It's already here. Look at what's already here. Look at the devastation that's already here. Let that be your bitch slap awake. We don't have to wait for more suffering to be on the planet. The planet is already in great pain. Do you see what I'm saying? Wake up and call upon the beloved and do the practices, and you will find that. And if that doesn't happen, you can have your money back for the whole weekend. It will happen. It will happen. Everybody who wakes up to this situation goes through tremendous fear. And you know, part of fear is good. I'm not one of these New Age teachers who say that fear is always a bad thing. One of the great phrases in the Bible is to be afraid, to be in awe of the divine, to be in awe of the responsibility that we have as human beings. And I think we should be afraid, very afraid of what we have done and of the appalling conditions that we've created out of our terrible, terrible misuse of our power. And I think one of the reasons why we're letting this whole horror continue is that we haven't allowed ourselves to be afraid enough. But the fear that paralyzes, the fear that disempowers, that is not a fear that you need to hold on to. You can work with the Divine Beloved directly to transmute that, while retaining the fear at the danger of the shadow erupting and continuing its work. Do you see what I'm saying? Choose the creative fear. Yes. Yes, madam.
I'm feeling so hopeful, thank you very much.
Oh.
Because I know what it's like to feel that fear and learn all this that's going on in the world, and what can I do? And I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I just feel so hopeful, so thank you.
And why do you feel hopeful? What is it?
Because you taught me what I need to do to bring the divine into me, till I have the energy to do this, and not just frustration and, oh my God, and watching children have to grow up, and there's hope. There's hope. That's just, I don't know what else to say.
Pythagoras said something fantastic. He said, take courage because the human race is divine. Once you really begin to get it, even a little bit of it, you realize that you have so much support. And that if only you do the practices, and if only you open your heart, and if only you allow yourself to be vulnerable to mystery, the mystery will give you so much because it loves you so much.
So come to my side, come out of fear.
Go and sit next to her, go on.
It's going to be awesome.
And what's so important, you know, what's just happened is that I think it is so important not to shame people for their naked fear. Because one of the things we have to admit is that we're all afraid at deep levels. And if some of us are gaining hope and joy and energy, it really is our responsibility to turn towards the people that are paralyzed and in fear and envelop them with love and encourage them by our own example. No judgment. Because why wouldn't a human being be afraid at this moment? But fear is not the end. Fear is actually the beginning of a great transformation. Dina, how are you, darling?
I'm hot and sweaty.
Hot and sweaty, that's all I get. She's such a bitch. This is the girl that I've lavished my soul on for year and year in, year out, who's done nothing to make this possible except stride up and down and annoy people. No, thank you so much again for everything that you've done. It's been such a marvelous experience. But apart from being quite understandably hot and sweaty, what is happening to you in this morning?
I'm understanding, because I kind of left this place, I think, the late 90s. And I was 44, so I left. This is where my,
Nashville, you left Nashville, yes.
I left, yeah. And when my son was old enough, I left. And so then I went to St. Louis for a couple of years, and then I landed in Austin. And some of the dear friends I made there are here today. But I was talking at lunch about that. And I've said this a little bit with another at Wisdom House at the luncheons, I didn't really understand why I came back here. And, we started talking, I guess, in January of 2010. So we kind of, I'm the one that's got the phone. So, anyway, I just was not happy to be back here. And, but it was probably the end of the year, you know, last year and the first of the year this year, I thought, I really have to just be here, settle in, and just be here. And then when I decided that, everything started opening up. And then, you know, I was working on this project to bring you here. But it's this weekend when I finally understand why I came back here, you know.
And why is that?
Because I went on this journey in those 10 years I was gone. And when I returned, I had gone through all these experiences, all these, you know, initiations. And when I returned, I just looked kind of worn out, like that rabbit, that velveteen, you know, it just looked like I'd been beaten up with a stick. And I don't think anyone here really realized what I had been through.
Right.
And what had happened in my life in those years while I was gone. And this, something about this weekend is me bringing all of that experience back here.
Oh. So it's an integration that's happening.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, because you were someone I met along the way, you know. So,
Hooray.
is that better than Huntsville?
Of being bad at it. And
You're afraid of the world at the moment, bringing this child into this world. Is it a boy or a girl?
it's a girl.
Oh, hello. She's adorable. What's her name?
Sarah.
Sarah. She's a Buddha.
But she is. But it's just, and I think the theme of the feminine makes me realize that there are a lot of the most feminine parts of me that have been really tangled just in growing and
Yes.
growing up as a person in this world. And so the responsibility of raising a daughter is a huge gift, but a huge responsibility.
Yes.
And I just feel a lot of comfort because I think I was just, the fear of doing it wrong was keeping me shut from receiving the mother
Yes.
that I need to be able to just
Yes.
be a channel instead of trying to do it right or do it well. So
Trust your sacred instincts. You are the mother. Gosh, you are the mother. You've given birth. Here you are. Mother, 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 mother. She's inside you. She gave birth to that child in you, through you. You're in direct connection with her. The more you can experience that protection, that connection, the more naturally the love will just flow from you. Because it's instinctual to your feminine nature. And your mothering of her from the depths of your heart is your prayer for the future. Not just her future, but for everyone's future. So bless you. Anybody else? What about some of those guys who've been sitting there? I'd like to hear from some of the guys. Any guy want to speak up? No. Yes.
I have various feelings going on, but the father, being a father, emerged today in a more poignant way. But prior to that, I can just feel that the tendency to think I know, but yet curious that it's hard. You know, what is going to be the final catalyst to just start doing, you know, to really activate. You know, I'm active in my life, but I can tell on the inside it's only active so far. And
Yes.
you know, and still the comforts I like, even though intellectually, you know, I have a gardener and I want to simplify, and I do, but still I like those comforts. And having money, you know, having savings, and having my job, and
Right.
you know, and just to really start moving more into that, taking that risk again. You know, as a younger man, it was easy to take more risks.
Yes.
It just,
But when you're a dad, you have a whole structure to keep up.
this whole thing.
So a whole responsibility, and that ties you into a system, which ties you into a way of living and being, which can be very, very difficult to think of having to go beyond or give up, isn't it? I understand.
And so today it was just interesting hearing Elizabeth there, but we have a 13-year-old daughter, and she was at home during this today, and she was going to go to a friend's house at noon. And I said, okay, I'll come and go pick you up at noon, right before noon. So I was going to leave her early. And she's 13 and excited about leaving. And then yesterday, I had kind of in a casual way was saying, well, if I don't show up, what are you going to do? And she said, oh, I'll just walk. And it's a mile away. And so anyway, here we are today. And the magic of the spell, you know, I'm in this spell of being here. And so it never, ever occurred to me to go pick up my daughter. Just never. And it was, you know, we went to 12:30. I was supposed to be there before 12. And I'm the responsible guy because I'm a CPA. You know, I have massive. I mean, that's the role I am. And so this ended, and I looked at my phone, and there were 5 messages, you know, text messages, telephone messages. It was like every 2 minutes on my iPhone. And I left here, and I was panicked, you know, oh my God. And I called Zoe, and she was fine. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. She said, that's all right. I'm so sorry. That's all right. I said, where are you? She says, I'm at Cat's house. And I said, did they pick you up? And she says, no, I just walked. And it's a mile away. And
What did you learn from this?
well, it's part of the other part of the story came later when she talked to my wife, but I'm learning, you know, this. It feels, as it's all settling in, it feels divine, you know, how, because she talked later to my wife, and it turns out that she decided to just go for it, and she went out of the house, and this car stopped with a man in it who asked her if she wanted a ride. And she said no or something. And then the guy left, and she kind of panicked and ran back to the house. And then from what I hear, that she watched this car go around 5 times in front of the house, or from down the block. And then she decided to just go for it. And she went out of the house and walked to her friend's house.
So she overcame some primordial fear.
And it feels, I mean, I was celebrating really when I hear that. And then there's the fear, you know, what could have been, and
Yes.
my own, oh my God, how could I have forgotten? And yet it feels so divine too. That somehow, or as Tanisra was saying, it was an initiation of sorts, her kind of coming into her own empowerment and being able to sort through what's good and not good. But it's so.
Or maybe there's a lesson about you looking at your own sense of responsibility for everything, which can sometimes go to playing God in things. And that one of our fantasies is that we have to do it all, be there all the time, be the ones who do the protecting. Well, there is a force in this universe which is benign, which does protect immensely, and which can truly help people. And it's called the divine. We don't have to do it all ourselves. We can relax sometimes. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Anyone? One more. This is important. Hi. What's your name?
My name's Sarah.
Sarah, hello.
I'm having trouble bringing all the wisdom and the love, especially for the feminine divine, into my body and into reality. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about next week and what it will be like as I'm trying to actually apply what I'm learning, and I'm worried that it will just dissolve from my memory and I'll keep going on as usual. That's honestly my fear.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, you're being very honest. Look, it will go away if you don't do serious spiritual practice. It will just have been a memorable time with lovely people and some exciting insights. If you don't do three things, if you don't really meditate on what has been said and what you've felt in this room, if you don't truly start evolving a spiritual practice which will help you stay aligned with the divine, and if you don't really, starting on Monday, try and approach everybody you meet and everything you do with an extra level of focused, clear wisdom and compassion, real attention. But if you do those three things, it won't go. You will be worked on by what has been given you and what you've received and what you've given to yourself. But it all depends on you. There's no magic pill. There's work to be done. You remember in The Graduate, when the young Dustin Hoffman is taken out to the pool by this burly, pompous guy who's about to reveal to him the secret of life, he thinks. And he says, I've got one word to say to you. And the camera starts to go limp and he says, plastics. Go into plastics, basically. Well, I have one word to say to you, and that is practice. Nobody goes from being a confused, forgetful, self-forgetful human being to a focused, sacred activist without an enormous amount of humble, daily practice. But if you turn up in the relationship with God, which is what sacred practice is, God will reveal more and more of yourself to you and of the divine presence to you. And you will come to understand that what I've been saying is not poetry, but real truth. And that will give you so much joy and encouragement and guidance. Just try it. You know, this is what the teachers of all time have always said, isn't it, Rami? One of the reasons I love the Buddha so much is the Buddha was the most realistic, perhaps, of all the great teachers. And he never pussyfooted around. Even on his deathbed, he told the truth. And they were carrying on and carrying on. And he said two things, two final instructions. He said, fill your mind with compassion. And then he said, practice Go and work out your own salvation with diligence. That's it. Nobody can do it for you. Although all the ones who have evolved have done it for you, but they've done it to show you that you have the grace, you have the power, you have the passion, you have the peace, you have the divine within you. And the only thing that separates you from the Buddha and you from Jesus and you from the Dalai Lama is that those beings have done the work. If you do the work of love and practice and constant remembrance of the divine, you will surprise yourself by how strong you become and how illumined and how brave. Anybody else? This is great. Thank you for saying it so honestly. It's so important what you just said, because we can all sit around congratulating each other, but let's get real about what these kinds of teachings really mean. Thank you. Yes? Anyone else before I go on? Anyone who wants something? Any question? Anything that arises at all? Yes?
Louder.
Oh, my friend who came last night, she didn't come back.
Ah.
Yeah, so, and she comes from a more, Southern Baptist
Ah, yes.
kind of, and, so anyway, I've got that, because that's part of this, I don't know, it's like I'm carrying that too, I'm concerned about her and.
Well, don't be concerned about her. She made a choice. That's perfect.
Yeah.
She can make whatever choice she wants. No?
Yes, I know. And I don't know even why I brought that up, except that, because I know what it is. It's because at lunch, Joan said, I hope you don't mind me repeating this, it's like most of us, like, how does this message get to the other folks? I was hoping that this would be some kind of an opening,
Well, let me say something which may reassure you. And it's from my own experience. Sometimes I've been put off by the very thing that I then became attracted to. And sometimes having a strong reaction against something shows that there's something in you that is trying to wake up to receive the very thing you think you don't need.
Yes, because she's the one that came a week early. She came last Friday.
Yes.
She was so excited about it.
Yes, you told me.
Yeah.
So, I've had many times as a teacher the experience that someone who says 1 year, my God, what rubbish, you're completely out of your mind, I'm never going to talk to you again, I hope you get run over by a truck, basically. And believe me, one gets messages like that. And then the next year comes back and says, I am so glad you annoyed me so much because you made me think about things that I would never have thought about, because I got so pissed off by you that your voice kept coming back, and I wrestled with the things that you said, and I found, despite myself, that there were certain things, not many, but some, that I really thought made sense. And so often that is the way in which we engage with truth. Years ago, I used to worry about whether this person liked it or that person liked it or how I could reach this person. And that's a normal reaction for a narcissistic people pleaser. But it has nothing to do with the authentic work of teaching. Because after one of these sessions in which I'd been trying to embrace everybody and trying to open it up for everybody, Ramakrishna came in a dream And Ramakrishna was furious with me, and he said, your job isn't to speak to the fish, it is to speak to the sea. You are meant to tell your truth as clearly and as strongly and as absolutely and as unshrinkingly and as fearlessly and as tenderly and as wisely as you can, and let the chips fall where they may, because you will never please everybody, and it's not your job. Your job is to please your beloved. So when I speak to you, I'm not trying to charm you. I'm speaking to the beloved in you, and trusting that that beloved will be activated, and trusting that if it's not activated today, something that I was able to say will activate it, so when you find the person who can tell you what you need to know in the way that you can respond to, you will be that further along. That's how it works, I think. Do you agree with that, Rami?
Yeah.
From your experience?
I do, and I am trying to charm you.
Well, he's honest. He's a good boy. Anybody else before I go on? Because this is very important that we, and I'm going to be talking a lot, so I'd like to hear from you. Yes.
Anything bothering you, any of us? And I do have a little thing, this is kind of be courageous of me to say this out loud. I want to bring up the secret.
Yeah, you're very brave.
For me, I know. And I'm just hoping that I'm not the only one that feels this way, but for me, that when I saw that, that snapped my life.
Oh.
Out of, I understand what you're saying, but I saw so much more in that. I never knew I was in charge of my thoughts and feelings. You know, I never knew I had any power. I learned so much from that, and that it just changed my life so much. So I just want you to be careful when you trash something like that. You know what I'm saying? It bothered me. I just wanted to.
Oh, thank you. No,
Say it
I
out
will.
loud.
I'm
I
afraid
totally
I'm going to continue to
understand.
trash it, but I do respect what you've said, because I wasn't trashing you when I trashed that. I know it has been said to me before, and I completely understand.
What you look at, I guess, and that just changed my whole life. And I did manifest a Mini Cooper.
So there! Thank you so much, and you're so brave. But once you've been woken up in that way, and I really salute the fact that that gave you that, then I think that you can separate yourself from the narcissistic images that it's giving and go to the real mystical instruction, which is so much more profound and so much more empowering.
Yeah, that was what I got.
Because I think, and I respect very much what you say, because I think so many of us are woken up initially by things that later on, 20 years later, we think, my God, how did I ever believe any of that stuff? But it gets one started. Right. And God uses everything, including the secret. Don't quote me. I will lose face on a major level. This is what happens in Nashville stays in Nashville. Thank you very, very much. Yes, madam.
That just reminded me.
And what did you manifest?
What did you manifest? I remember that in listening to this, that there's a verse in the Old Testament about a man's jackass, donkey, who God speaks through. And
Yes.
you know, I always remind him.
This gives me hope continually.
God can speak to a jackass, honey, he can speak through me.
There's a marvelous story in Rumi, which is one of the great, great stories. There's this supposedly illumined guy who thinks he's totally enlightened, and he sees this shepherd, and this shepherd is talking to the sheep. Is talking to God as if God was a sheep, and saying, what lovely fur you have, what lovely... Sheep don't have fur, do they? What a lovely fleece do you have, and what lovely eyes you have, and what a lovely bar you make. And the sage, so-called, goes up to this guy and said, look, this is total rubbish. You're talking about the absolute transcendent source of all being as a sheep. And the guy is absolutely mortified and terribly scared and deeply, deeply sad at his supposed idiocy. And the sage stalks off feeling frightfully proud of himself. And God appears to the sage and is wild with fury and says, how dare you? How dare you insult anybody's way of coming to me? God Almighty, this story is turning into a story against myself. Oh, Lord. And we're getting to the shadow. Lord! And he said, everybody has a different way of coming to me, and wisdom is to respect that and to guide it. It's such an important statement. Which I hope I shall one day learn the quote. Anybody else before we go on? Was there somebody in the... Yes, madam.
I was just going to share that my day job is a grief counselor with...
Louder.
My day job is a grief counselor with a live hospice, and the death and dying process brings the sacred into places where maybe they haven't thought of it. And the female is something that's the feminine, the divine feminine has been real important to me. And it's when people are in that raw state often, they're open to considering female images, because there's so much, especially in the South or whatever, the Bible Belt, there's so much of a heavy sort of male imagery and the whole faith stuff. But I gently introduce that because there's so much need for healing in the grief process.
Yes.
And with these images of men, there's so many negative, nothing against you guys, but there's more male relationship difficulties, it seems to be.
Suck it up, you're dying, just grin and bear it, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So, and just negative relationship stuff. So the feminine does help, and even trying to create images where, and using Mother Mary as an image even with non-Catholic folks, that seems to be helpful at times too. So.
Well, I think what you're talking about too in your work is what's happening in the world at large. That as we get more flayed, as we get more helpless, as we feel more desperate, as our defenses burn down, as our fantasies of confidence are shown to be the threadbare lunacies they are, it's more and more and more and more to the tenderness and the nurture of the mother side of God that we need to turn, because it's that side we need to experience so deeply to be able to find the courage to go on and to go through this death.
And the images of healing and nurturing and safety and comfort and all that are easier to get through the female.
Because even the toughest guy on his deathbed wants to be held, wants to be loved, wants to be shown tenderness, right? So there's hope for Dick Cheney yet. Yes, there is. It's not over until the fat lady sings. Anybody else? This is...
You got the heart of a fat lady.
You're a wild, bad woman. Go and read The Secret 10 times.
I heard the book wasn't as good as the movie.
No comment. My friends, would somebody get me a glass of water, and then we will plunge into the shadow. T.S., thank you so, so much.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
I don't know how to frame the question exactly, but Ruth made me think of it. So we live in this environment down here. It's very patriarchal, very male-dominated. Someone else talked about the images, the masculine images. Does it help being gay to do this? You know what I mean?
I'm not gay. Oh God, no, that's a wonderful question.
The question is there a certain kind of man who is doing this work?
Well, that's a wonderful question.
As opposed to, I know many women, theologians, who are doing this kind of thing, the divine feminine, bringing out feminine images within Christianity, within Judaism, but they're within a box. They're within a theological box. And then there are a few, and I would say a few of us, but that's a little chutzpahdik, but okay. There's a few of us who are men who are doing this outside the box, sort of like we want to burn the box down almost. And I'm wondering if, like Beat Griffiths, and when you write about The Return of the Mother, right? So
yes.
The people who are involved in this, the men who are involved in this, do you?
Oh, I think it's a wonderful question. Well, actually, I think that gay people have the function of representing the mysterious marriage of opposites that everyone is aiming for, right? So I think that when you have an integrated and mature and luminous lesbian, straight women can see in that lesbian the integrated masculine that they need also to integrate. And when you have an integrated, adorable, witty, brilliant, wise, sweet, gay man, I wonder who we could be talking about. When you have that, men who are not freaked out, and most men now really couldn't give a damn. Most of the men in my life are straight men, and most of the men whom I love the most are straight and completely unfazed by gay or straight because they're confident in their own masculinity. But men who are attuned can see in the integrated gay man the way that the feminine adds so much richness and depth and humor, and they can integrate that into their personalities in ways that are natural to them. So I think one of the great things that's happening in this revolution of the mother is that she is empowering very powerful gay teachers, men and women, to show what she's bringing to all people, gay or straight, which is a miraculously richer integration of opposites on every level. Are you following me? Yes. And actually, this is one of the reasons why homophobia has been kept alive by the patriarchy, because if you can separate a man from his feminine, you can easily turn him into a corporate robot or a killer for sale. And if you can separate a woman from her masculine, you can easily turn her into a courtesan of power, or a degraded housewife, or a brilliantly creative depressive who never realizes her creativity. But if you allow the gay person to be just as holy and just as sacred as the straight male and the straight female, and if you recognize that the mother's mystery of the union of opposites is appearing in a particularly wonderful and beautiful and healing way in gay people, then the straight man can integrate his feminine and won't be part of the killing machine, and the straight woman can integrate her masculine and stand up for the rights and duties and honors and responsibilities of the feminine in a world that desperately needs it. So we all need each other to turn up in our fullest integrity and adorability. Does that make sense to you? Yes. It's very important, I think. And it's not at all a coincidence that one of the most spectacular aspects of our time is that there are a lot of very powerful gay teachers now teaching up a storm and being recognized and being loved as themselves without any need to pretend. Isn't that wonderful? If I were gay, I would be very happy.
The opposition to that uses the guise as counseling people as though gay is not a natural thing. It's like, well, it's a choice. And that is...
God, it was never a choice, God.
But that, to me, that's just total hypocrisy, and it's
Well,
an untruth. It's an untruth across the board. And
Well,
they
it's
use
an
that as-
idiocy.
They use that as a fulcrum to control
Yes,
the masses.
yes. Well, if you disempower people of the integration of their opposite, the divine human can never be born. Because if you look at all of the great illumined beings of humanity, you will see that they are male and female together. Who is more masculine and who is more feminine than Jesus? Who is more powerful than Mary and more tender than Mary? Who is more adamantinely clear from the highest masculine level than the Buddha, and who is quieter and tenderer than the Buddha? Look at the Dalai Lama. If you look at 10 photographs of the Dalai Lama, there'll be one photograph in which he looks like a warrior. There'll be another photograph in which he looks like Papa Bear. There'll be another photograph in which he looks like the wisest old grandmother from the mountains you've ever imagined. There'll be another photograph in which he is a child. And what you're seeing in the increasingly evolved ones is that gender is no longer so important because they are given through their increasing evolution in the divine all of the powers of all of the sexes and sexualities to use in the service of love. This is a great mystery. And it points to one of the great mysteries of the divine human. And this we're going to go into more deeply tomorrow. So hang in there. But one of the great mysteries of this birth is that it is at its deepest level the birth of the sacred androgyne, the divine child that has both male and female, and also the mystery beyond both. And the new human is going to be someone who does not need to have to identify with any of the stereotypes of any of the sexes or sexualities, because he or she is free to move between the modalities to serve the truth in whatever way the truth needs to be served. So the Dalai Lama can cry like a woman and thunder like the sky, because he is all things and he can manifest all aspects. And surely don't all of you, gay or straight, want to come into that kind of richness? And I think one of the reasons why perhaps gay people can be not the special forces or the elite of this transformation, because there are gay people who say, oh, all the gay people are so much more evolved than all the straight people, poor things, and this is another kind of fascism, and this is another kind of idiocy, and it's so not true. God, go to any gay bar and you'll realize. But because a gay person has had to go through so much to claim his or her sacred identity against the evidence of thousands of years of oppression, the integration that can take place in that person can be a very deep one. Just as one of the great features of our time are the astonishing women teachers. In America, you have the great Marianne Williamson, who is the greatest orator in America. If you ever experienced Marianne, a great, great friend of mine. I love her so much, but she's genius. She can blaze with the power of the sacred feminine. But Marianne has had a hell of a job becoming Marianne in the face of so much secret opposition for being a woman. But the integration that is taking place in her and the power that's being manifested through her has a greater intensity for the suffering that it's had to go through. And Caroline Myss is another teacher who is a very powerful manifestation, especially of the ferocious feminine. And Caroline is one of my best friends, so I know whereof I talk. I used to live around the corner from her. She's an extraordinary figure. So this is part of this great transformation that's happening, isn't it? Does that answer your question?
Part.
Ah.
Let me do one follow-up and I'll let it
No, 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 no. Yes, please. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Because here's just what's in my head. And I'm just, this is really personal, so.
It's
but I
okay.
thought, you know, you started with.
I've written 4 autobiographies. If I didn't want you to know about my life, my God.
Okay, so lots of times gay men have been shamans. You know, throughout
Yes,
history,
and
right?
bisexuality has been one of the great features of the shamanic tradition.
And
Yes.
then you have a lot, and then you also have a lot of men who are, in the Catholic world, you're devotees of like Louis de Montfort or the Mother and all of this, but they're celibate men.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, am I gay? No. I'm wondering.
Come and see me afterwards. It's okay, Rami, it's okay.
So I'm wondering, because I'm one of the very few sexually active, non-celibate, heterosexual guys who are devotees of the Mother. And in
Well,
Judaism,
in the West, but
Well, yes,
India's
in the
crawling
West.
with them, right?
Sorry,
Crawling.
say
India has millions of heterosexual men who are
that?
absolutely
I meant
passionate about the
in the
Mother.
West in Judaism, right?
Yes, yes.
So I'm wondering if this is the next thing. I mean, you start with people who are shamanic outliers in a sense, you know, who
Yes.
society sees as different and then allows to go into this world, right? I'm
Yes.
making sense. But now it's coming into heterosexual straight men in the Judeo-Christian West.
It is, and I want to say this so strongly. I think one of the most incredible things that I've come to experience in my life, I'm going to be 60 in June. This is your cue to say, it can't be true. Botox, 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 no. But what I'm amazed at is the quality of integration of the young men in their 30s at this moment. They really are, some of the ones I'm meeting just completely astonish me by their level of maturity, their level of sweetness. Do you want to know? I wouldn't mind knowing where either, darling. Please edit that out. No, it's extraordinary. There is a wholly new kind. I was talking yesterday about a film project that I want to make on Rumi with a 35-year-old straight guy, and we were talking about the love of Rumi and Shams. And I thought that I would have to pussyfoot around the homoerotic element of that love. It wasn't a homosexual love, I think, but it was a complete love. So everything was in it, like the love between Jesus and John. It was a divine love which was fearless. And I didn't have to pussyfoot around at all. He plunged straight in. He said, well, I put it in Hollywood terms. Shams and Rumi had the most great bromance in history. And I thought, wow. Well, that's one way of putting it. But it was beautiful because he went straight to the love. And then he said that he's going through a divorce himself, and the only way that he can get through it is by being with his 3 closest friends whom he's known since 11, and he spent the weekend with them, and they had just loved him up. They had adored him. They'd taken him to drink. They'd talked about his marriage with him. They'd adored him, and he adored them. And he spoke about them, and he choked up because he loved them so much and was so shameless and beautiful about the way that he was talking about them. And then we got into the love between Shams and Rumi, and I said, well, I used to think it was a master-disciple love, and that's too small. And then I used to think it was a homosexual love, and that was too exciting. No, it was too much my own projection, because what it really was, I believe, is a new kind of love based in the most profound spiritual intimacy. And what they did together was enable each other to lose those macho barriers so that their gorgeous, complete, sacred masculinity could come out because they dared to love each other that much. Right? But these guys, that's not news to these guys. This is what they're living. And this is what they're unafraid to live. So I think what's happened is that there was the feminist revolution, which opened up the rights of the feminine. Then there was the gay revolution, which made men have to come to terms with the homoerotic side of every man, the deep need to be loved and love other men. And now some marvelous new amalgam, new alchemy is taking place, in which the old fears are just not operating at the same level. And this is the mother's transformation. Am I making any sense? Are you noticing this? Nancy's son is 1,000% heterosexual. Michael, I think we could say perhaps 2,000%. But Michael comes and leans against me and kisses me and adores me, and we sit on the porch and have cigars, and respects me deeply, and I love him and respect him. He's like a son to me. He couldn't care less that I'm gay. He loves it. He loves being loved by his gay friends. And he adores his gay friends. And he learns from his gay friends. And he feels protected and sustained and honored in his beauty and power as a man by his gay friends. And this is the new world. And thank God, I'm still gorgeous. I take that as a yes. No, but you see what I'm saying? Thank God we've come to this at last, despite fundamentalism and all the rest of this nonsense. Because, oy vey, if Jesus wasn't all sexualities in one thing, radiating them all at the highest level, you don't understand who Jesus is. Why are the two great loves of Jesus, Mary Magdalene and John? Why do you think? Oh, he was pansexual. No. He was divine love in a body. And how could divine love in a body not love both sexes in the highest and wildest and sweetest and deepest and most extraordinary way? He was modeling the new divine human. And boys, it's open to us all. We can all have bromances. Isn't that wonderful? And women know this already, of course. But I think women too are coming to this next level of tenderness and acceptance of their homoerotic side and their masculinity, and bringing them together in a new form of power. This is amazing. This is the mutation of the birth. Does that answer your question?
It goes quite a long way.
I think it literally is a mutation. It's going to be a lot more difficult to persuade these young guys to go out and kill another beautiful young man. And stop him having a family and a child and the whole thing. Anybody else?
Can I throw just a tagline to this little discussion?
This is an incredibly important discussion. I'm so grateful that you opened it up.
You know,
I will never talk to you
you've probably
again.
been a female in many lifetimes, so I think that contributes.
What, darling? I'm sorry.
I said he's probably been a female in many lifetimes, so that probably helped him out. So just a thought.
No, that is true. He has a very evolved feminine side. Well, most of the great men I know do.
The other thing I wanted to share is I came here with just divine guidance. I'm not a follower. I'm sorry, I will be from now on.
Darling, let's clear it up right now. I don't want you to be a follower. If you start being a follower, I will come and hit you on the head in a saucepan. Worse, I will appear in your dreams dressed as Margaret Thatcher in hot pants. Be afraid, be very afraid. The last thing I want is followers. I don't want you to follow me. I want you to realize your own passion and get going and send me regular checks through the mail.
And that is why.
Come on, get real.
Yeah, I am. I'm
You know, sweetheart, no, really, I'm not a guru, and I will never be a guru, and I think the guru system is another patriarchal game.
But I was skeptical, to be honest, about a male bringing the divine feminine, and I'll share that. And so a little part of me was very glad.
How did I do?
Perhaps gay, right? Because that gave a sort of extra credibility in my way of thinking. So, you know,
Yes.
pointing to that discussion.
Well, I think gay men do carry the wound of the feminine.
Yes, exactly.
Because their beauty and their sacredness and the passion of their heart's emotions have been so wounded by this craziness. Just as women's sacred emotions have been so wounded by patriarchal madness. So they share that. And that's one of the reasons why gay men and women have such an extraordinary relationship. My straight guy friends say, I'm so jealous of you. You've got all these fantastically beautiful, powerful, wonderful women in your life as these sublime friends, and nobody's answering my requests on Match.com. I said, well, if you're very lucky, you could be born gay in the next life. Now, one of the great things about being gay is the enormous intimacy with women that you can have. It's a tremendous advantage in the integration of the divine feminine, because you come to understand so much of the feminine through that deep, deep sacred intimacy with women. Because women speak to gay men about men, especially in ways that they never speak to men. And my God, one day I'm going to make a tape of all my women friends talking about you straight guys, and your hair is going to fall out permanently, and you're going to go to spas, and you're going to go on running, and you're going to open every door, and you're going to read books, and you're going to stop talking about yourselves and actually ask occasionally, and how really are you? It's amazing what you learn. Because if you're in the middle, you get the deep information from both. Because, of course, as a gay man, I also have very deep male friends who are straight, and they speak about their pain with women to me in a way that they don't speak about that pain to their male friends who might mock them or feel that they're stupid or weak or making too much of a mess of things. Or change the subject, because they know that I'll listen and I feel deeply for them. And I learn so much about the terrors that are in every straight man in dealing with a powerful woman. And that makes me very awed by the immense complexity of this great sexual dance that we are all in. I mean, I'm not in it because I'm totally beyond it, of course, but you poor unenlightened creatures trapped in the body.
Could you tell us what the men tell you?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Are you ready?
Yes. What is it about powerful women?
My guy friends tell me that one of the tragedies of feminism has been not that women are claiming their rights, because these are men who truly want women to be equal and want women, but they are men who want women to be women, to lead with the thing that enchants and intoxicates them most, which isn't just sex, but is tenderness and respect. Because a thing that women sometimes forget about men, which my guys talk to me about a lot is that a man's profoundest identity is bound up with his self-respect, his honor. And sometimes a very powerful woman who is too yanged out can get out her dick chopper a lot too fast and can be extremely cruel and degrading and humiliating to a man in ways that not only don't help him, but drive him deeper into whatever she wants to try and change in him. And what they are really asking women to be is women in the full beauty of their feminine. Because they say to me that if my woman tells me I really need to change in a way that is furious and disrespectful, I feel so angry that I will deliberately go on doing that behavior, or worse, I'll even want to beat her up or abandon her or have an affair with her best friend in front of her or something crazy just to get out of this terrible, terrible panic that sets in me. But if she comes to me and she says something like, I love you. You are a great guy. You really are somebody amazing, and you give me so much. But there's something that's worrying me, and it's not just worrying me because it hurts me. It's worrying me because you would be so much more complete and so much more satisfied if only you would just deal with this, both for me and for you. And you can be saying the same thing, but the first activates the primordial male fear of the dark mother, the vagina dentata, the destructive feminine. And the second irradiates the man with the love that can help him take the critique he needs to take to evolve. Does that ring true for you? Yeah. What about the guys in the room? Right? Anybody think that that's true? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's very true. That reminds me of some work I read by David.
Data? Yes, he's great. I love David Data.
And
Very naughty boy. God, he says things in his book. I think, my God, I wish I'd had the courage to write that, because it's so true. Yeah?
Reading him is a chore in itself, but there is that refusal to merge into a non-existent entity of male and female. They're both discrete and powerful forces.
Yes.
And I think for myself, there is a species of wisdom that is uniquely male,
yes,
and it is uniquely female.
Yes.
When
And they can be transmitted.
Of course they can. They can.
But they can only be transmitted in respect and love. They can't be forced upon the other person, the other sex. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the sharing of them is not something that happens because of a necessary imperative, but because of a desire to take two separatenesses and forge them or make them or merge them,
in love,
coalesce them in
yes,
love into one.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's, I think, for men and women, the uniqueness of their own sexuality, gender, may take a strident, may seem strident when viewed from the other, from the other side of.
Yes.
I don't have the language for this. And so you're absolutely right. What a woman projects as the strong feminine is just absolutely glorious and powerful and
yes,
strong, certain and provocative. But whether it's the way that a male or myself perceives it as strident and vituperative, or whether it's seen as a loving offer of let me help you become whole, yes, with an angle that you may not see. And
well, then the man also has the responsibility to do two things. If he's really going to have an adult and tantric relationship with a woman, he's going to have to work on his own shadow fear of the dark feminine,
well, that's
firstly, and then he's also going to have to work on his tenderness and protective warmth towards the woman, because sometimes, not always, a woman becomes strident because she doesn't feel protected enough from the man, loved enough.
And I tried to say it in the way that it's a perception of attack rather than an actual one.
Right.
And this is where I'm clumsy in trying to say this, because I recognize that half of me has no knowledge, and that's that feminine side, or it's gaining knowledge. So,
But isn't it wonderful that we're talking like this, because this is a unique kind of conversation that belongs to the revolution of the mother, that we really now know that there are tremendous problems on both sides in this great sexual dance, and that both sides need to work on the shadow, both sides need to also claim the sacred uniqueness of their own sacred identity, and both sides need to train themselves in the deep art of listening. Right? And that's the next stage for both the men's movement and the women's movement. It should be the sacred marriage movement, in which men and women work this out in a sacred way together and learn these mysteries together. Wouldn't that be amazing? And why is this so important for sacred activism, would you think? Go on, no, it's crucial, because Tantra is crucial for the birth. And it's crucial because if you have a radiant, balanced, powerful woman with a radiant, balanced, powerful man having children out of their mutual respect and mutual adoration, totally blessing the child, then you have a hale, hearty, healthy, whole human race. So this working that we're doing now is actually crucial to the balancing of the future. You have a male that is loving and a feminine and a female that's powerful, and that's the combination. Anybody disagree with that or want me to be more precise about that before we go on? Yes.
Comment/question about that is that I have heard and read a lot of people saying that women are actually going to have to really lead that process.
Yes.
Power is so intoxicating that it's kind of just blinding, and because women have not had the power, they're
Yes.
the ones who can kind of wake people up a little more easily, and I just wondered what you thought about that.
Well, I think that it's very difficult for a woman to become powerful in the world at the moment without being constrained by the way she has to assume power in a patriarchal culture, by being tough and harder than the guys, etc. Look at Margaret Thatcher, for example, and look at some aspects of Hillary Clinton, although I think Hillary Clinton is such an amazingly evolving woman and has become more and more masterful as she's grown older and now has a very beautiful glow to her. But she has in the past had a kind of harshness which has antagonized people. And I think that there are a lot of women that are emerging now that are very strong and very certain and very clear in a way that not many men are yet. And it's one of the imbalances of our transformation that most of the people doing the really serious work at the moment are women. But the men are catching up. And these young men, I have great hope in. I think the next generation is going to see the men who will be adequate to the new woman. And this is very thrilling for Grandpa here.
Could I give an illustration of that?
Yes.
My husband and I are, we like to think, I went through the sacred marriage chosen to shun the sexualization that they get from society.
Gosh.
And just be friends first.
That's so amazing.
So there's hope for you, my daughter.
Well, that is exactly the sign that I've been talking about, that the key to this transmutation
Yes.
of the human into the divine human is in the sacred androgyny of everybody.
And it's very natural to them. It's very natural to them.
Yes. And the boys especially feel immensely released by it, don't they?
Yes, very relieved.
Because there's a terrible prison of machismo that a man has to fix himself into, which a sensitive straight man suffers tremendously from.
But he's been around gay and straight people all his life, and it doesn't really occur to him.
They
that
don't
that's
think
an
about it.
issue.
It's who you love, it's who you care. It's amazing. The game is about to be getting very exciting indeed. And I'm going to have a complete body transplant to be able to enjoy it. I'm going to get Brad Pitt's body in Troy. So, my friends, let's take a short break. It's now 3:45. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then let's come and plunge into the shadow in the last part of our time. Thank you for that wonderful, unexpected discussion. That was great. Wow.
He appears in the Hebrew Bible, as well as the
Yeah.
wisdom literature in the Greek Bible.
Read
So-
something from it for us.
Okay, I just
Because-
opened it random. So this is from a text called Wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, who is a intertestamental between the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. This is Mother speaking. She says, "I am the breath of the Most High, blanketing the earth like mist, filling the sky like towering clouds.
Wow.
I encompass distant galaxies and walk the innermost abyss. Over crest and trough, over sea and land, over every people and nation, I hold sway."
Yes! That's
So,
fabulous.
If you're looking for her in the Judeo-Christian
Yes.
tradition, there's one copy left.
Who? Now I know why he invited me, for that moment. It's a wonderful book. You should read it. Have you, and also this wonderful book on Ecclesiastes, which is a hell of a book. And Ecclesiastes is the most ferocious scripture. It's one long Zen slap. It's fantastic. We're going to have an hour together.
Can't wait for the editor hears that.
That was the most wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for plunging into that, because it is so important to bring this sacred information down into the nitty-gritty of how we relate to each other in life. Because the great revolution of the birth of the divine human is, of course, very grand and exalted on one level, but it's also very nitty-gritty on another level, because you can talk up a blue streak about being born into the divine human, but if you're insulting to the woman in Safeway and you're hopelessly homophobic and you're unable to integrate your feminine or your masculine, you ain't doing a hill of beans. So, right? And this is difficult work, challenging work for all of us. Well, for some of us. It's very hard for all of us, because we're all being stretched into a new level of profound sensitivity. We're all being stretched to really take the leap into including the whole human race and all people in an embrace of recognition as facets of ourselves. That's the key to the birth of the new self. I want to talk to you about perhaps the most important thing that I could talk to you about, and we won't have time to go into the shadow, I'm afraid, today, because that is a long and complex and intricate discussion. But if you really want to get my vision of the shadow, it's in my book, The Hope, and there are very, very pages that I took a very long time to write, because I wanted to get them as accurate as possible, about the shadows that we all have facing this crisis, about the shadow of the mystic and the shadow of the activist, and how to transform the shadow So if you want the dope, get the book, as they say, please, because I think it's so important. But perhaps one of the greatest shadows of our movement, and by that I mean the movement of people of goodwill who truly want to see this world transformed so that children like Sarah can grow up in a healed world. Perhaps one of our greatest shadows is that we're so damn hopeless at getting together to organize anything. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed how hard it is to get so-called conscious people to actually come together to organize their... Everybody wants to talk about their vision of the spiritual path. Everybody's fragmented in their own personal pursuit of awakening. And this is very, very dangerous because it means one thing, which is that you leave the brilliant, carefully planned organization to the very forces that are destroying this planet. Amen. Right? Amen. I like that. The corporations in their planned rape of the mother are unbelievably and brilliantly organized. The media, in its semi-conscious plan to dumb down the entire world and fill our minds with trash and violence and trivia at the moment when we need inspiration more than oxygen, is incredibly well organized, of course, by the very well organized corporations. And the politicians who are feeding off vampirically the fears and the anxieties of the people are absolutely brilliant in the way they market themselves, in the way they get together to plan their operations, and that's one reason why they're so successful at keeping the death machine going. The death machine is a demonic masterpiece of organization. So when the hell are you and I going to get real about needing to organize together what we desperately need on the earth, which is a worldwide, grassroots, interconnected revolution of love in action? Because if you think that sitting about from time to time in a group of people and praying and vaguely sending vibrations to the poor and the rest of it are really going to shift this death machine or even create structures that are going to survive what is about to happen, you are out of your mind. You are completely dumb, blind, and deaf, and you are actually conspiring with the darkness that you pretend to dislike so much. So the question is, and this is the question that Occupy has at least tried to answer. Yes, sir?
Why do you think, like, fundamentalist Christian people are so well at organizing and being activists, whereas people of more, let's say, ecumenical
Yes.
and more open-minded spirituality are god-awful shitty at it?
Yes, and why are the terrorists, beautiful question, why are the terrorists so extraordinarily organized and so incredibly brave? They're mad, but you can't say they're cowardly. They're brave. And why are the ecumenical, sweet-hearted, liberal mystics so slushy, smudgy, squishy, and there must be another word, find it, so completely unable to get together on anything? This is the major question of our time. Because unless we find the answer to that and rectify that, we are going to give the world over on a golden plate to the people who really are going to set about destroying it. And are doing a great job of that already. Thank you. I think there are several answers. And one is that as we've been exploring all this weekend, there is a very subtle demonization of passion that happens in the New Age and in the traditional patriarchal mystical systems that basically cuts you off from the kind of gorgeous wild fuel that you'll actually need to get you off your ass and get you off your ass together with other people to do something. So if you tell people that they have no right to their outrage, and if you tell people the true holiness is being serene in the face of all of this destruction, and if you tell people, not The Secret, because we've decided The Secret is a mystical masterpiece, but something like The Secret that tells people that the aim of being alive is to manifest more goods, if you do that, what you create is a group of atomized slaves who have no hope in hell of getting together to in any way create a counterbalancing force to the immensely organized forces of fanaticism. So what is needed, and this is one of the things that the Mother is bringing through as we have been describing all weekend, what is needed is to say to the people who are saying to us, you cannot have sacred, passionate emotions because they're not enlightened, and say, sorry, we've heard that patriarchal garbage for a long time, and it's actually resulted in a ravaged world. So don't give us that anymore. Teach us how to take these wild, beautiful, and holy emotions, transmute them and transform them so that they become the energy that can make us passionate about really helping the world enough and passionate about getting together to do something real about the world. Am I making my point in a delicate and deeply, deeply subtle, nuanced way? Because I hope so. So this return of the Mother that we've been describing all week, or weekend, isn't some beautiful luxury, right? It is essential to your and my survival that we allow this wild love for creation, this wild love for each other, this wild, beautiful love for the animals, this wild, holy love for our sexual tantric partners, this wild, holy love to come into our bodies and motivate us and get us alive again. If we were organized as we are mostly now, it would be an organization of half-dead tofu people, right? Who've spent so many years smiling fake New Age smiles that they're all prematurely wrinkled. With those dead eyes, you have to have the dead eyes. It doesn't work if you don't have the dead eyes. Get over this entirely fake spirituality and realize that it has nothing to do with either the authentic peace and serenity of the authentic divine or the authentic passion and truth and passion for transformation of the authentic divine. Nothing to do with either, because what they describe as peace and serenity is actually passivity in the face of the genocide of the planet. The end. The end, as they say, as Calamity Jane says in Deadwood, my second favorite serial of all time, apart from Downton Abbey. This is an advert for Downton Abbey. The other way in which we have been rendered impotent is that the patriarchal traditions have tended to think of enlightenment as something you pursue on your own for your own illumination, and have interpreted it as being free from engagement and attachment to the world. Right? Yes. So you're more and more enlightened and more free and more awake, the less you are really concerned with relationships, the less you are really entangled in politics, the less you are really implicated in the actual nitty-gritty, bloody, grueling work of the world. This is a fantasy. This has nothing to do with real awakening. Real awakening, we've seen its true face, and its true face is Jesus. Its true face is the Buddha, the real Buddha, not the fake Buddha. Its real face is the face of men and women who have woken up to the sacred glory of creation and who have given their whole lives, their whole being, their whole resources to save, protect, and honor that sacredness. And this is the vision of passionate enlightenment that the mother side of God is bringing in. And it's a vision that really challenges all of the previous ideas of holiness, all of the religion's ideas about an otherwhere that we're supposed to go to if we're good enough, and all the patriarchal religion's traditional visions of enlightenment. It's saying you've all failed, and what you've allowed by your abandonment of the reality of the holiness of the creation and the holiness of relationship and the holiness of responsibility for justice, what you've done by that is hand the world lock, stock and barrel over to the organized forces of the fanatical dark. Whew. That's where we are. So let's all go out and drink Jim Jones Kool-Aid for the last time, spiked with cyanide, and sing Kumbaya in each other's arms, and let the whole damn thing go up in flames. No, that's not what we're going to do, because that would be too easy and not nearly exciting enough. Because what you and I have got to do is to get real about the extremity of the danger. Get real about the ways in which our passion has been systematically, socially engineered out of us, and spiritually engineered out of us, and politically engineered out of us, and demonized out of us by a media that cherishes irony and promiscuity and pornography and violence over the holy, wonderful power of love, and start getting real about all of these terrifying persecutions of our true self, and take back, with the Mother's great grace, take back our real, holy, wild, empowered selves, but not just for ourselves, but in sacred relationship with each other and with the creation. And find the forms of organization that can really bring together the whole of those people who are desperate about what's happening, who need to be with each other to sustain the enthusiasm for change, and who need each other's wonderful synergy and creativity and networks and resources to be able to plan the strategies that we're going to have, the incredibly wise, careful, focused, passionate, compassionate strategies that we're going to need to be able to preserve this planet from the forces that are so brilliantly organized to destroy it. Are you hearing me? Because I'm going to faint in a minute if I continue like this. And you have got to hear this now. Because if you don't hear this now, you'll be still reading something like The Secret when the last tree burns down and the last forest in the Amazon is just a vast waste of ash, and those final 5% of the sea is polluted. You're going to wake up of this dream of separateness and of rescue by aliens or rainbow ships or whatever the hell the fantasy du jour is. And you're going to wake up much too late to a totally destroyed planet because you just didn't see, and you didn't care, and you didn't wake up, and you didn't do anything. Right?
Yes.
So, one of the things that happened when I wrote The Hope was that I never wanted to finish the book until I could offer a form of organization of all of us who care in the way that we care from a large, ecumenical, universal, mystical, activist, sacred activist perspective, a form of organization that reflected the genius of the Mother, but also could potentially become tremendously powerful with soft power, which in the end is stronger because it lasts longer than hard power, and which could provide the kind of inspiring support and energy and enthusiasm that we're going to need. And I went into a period of about a year where I studied very carefully, very, very carefully, the right-wing religious organizations that are so brilliant in using the passion of fundamentalism to implicate others, to preach to others, to galvanize others. And I studied deeply the terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and others that have, whatever you may say about them, an absolutely crystalline genius for getting things done with very few resources. Look at the success of the terrorists. They've been able to hold the whole world hostage with bombs that they're making in their backyard, and people who, unlike us, who say we care, are actually willing to give their lives for what they believe. And there have been times where I have banged against the door of the mother and just begged her to send on earth people with a universal mystical perspective as passionate, as brave, as wild, as courageous as the guys who died by going into that tower in that plane. Where are they? Right? Where are the people who care enough for the whole of humanity to risk everything in that way? I believe you. Now we must get together. And what I discovered in this organization, this passion to understand the ways in which these very powerful groups could work with passion, what I understood was, and this is so important, is that they are very effective for three reasons. They're effective because they work in relatively small units that love each other, hold each other accountable, know each other well. That's crucial, because if you work in too big units, you can get away with a lot of blah and manipulation, but if you work in a close unit that is really working with the shadow and working with each other's personalities, you can form immensely powerful, coherent ways of acting in the world and strategies. The second thing that I discovered as I plunged into this analysis was that unlike us, and I've been teaching in the so-called and so New Age for 20 years. And every time I teach, I give 3 ultimately powerful sacred practices, usually. And every time I go back to the place I taught these 3 practices to, about a year later, I asked the people who came up to me and said, "Oh my God, you made me feel so fantastic. I mean, my God, I felt the light coming down. My toes became divine." I asked them, "Did you actually do the practices? Did you do the practices? Did you think that I was just entertaining you between 2 and 2:35 because I needed a filler? I was trying to give you the oxygen of your survival and the way to transform yourself into a divine human being, and you enjoyed it in that afternoon, and you did damn all with it, because for you, the spiritual life is a kind of smorgasbord of potential opportunities which you can play with as you want, when you want, and not something that you need like oxygen to be able to get yourself to the place where you can begin to be effective in a world that's going mad." And the answer is always no. Nearly always no. And it's an absolute miracle that I haven't shot my brains out and sent them in pieces to the various churches that I've taught for all these years. And this is warning all of you that if you knew. So, the second thing is that the fundamentalists really believe in Jesus. It's not my Jesus, and it sure as hell isn't, I think, Jesus' Jesus, but it is some version of Jesus, and they believe in it, and they are prepared to really give up time, money, energy, unbelievable amounts of energy to really supporting this belief. And you can say what you like about it, but I now live in the fundamentalist South, and some of the most extraordinary, beautiful people with a totally crazy theology live around me, and I respect them. I respect their sincerity. I respect their authenticity. I don't agree with a word of their theology, but again, I go to the mother and I batter on her door and I say, okay, you didn't want to send me people like the terrorists. Please send me somebody who's prepared at least to be as energetic and energized and passionate and wild about what they believe and are really anxious to do something to get the world to reflect their beliefs like the fundamentalists. Okay, the terrorists, I agree that was a bit of an extreme demand, but what about somebody like the fundamentalists? No. No, it's got to be tofu man. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I mean, there's a little bit of tofu in the best of us. You know what I'm talking about. This movement is lazy, it's narcissistic, it's individualistic, it's self-obsessed. I can give a talk for 2 days about the end of the world, and somebody at the end of those 2 days, when I'm absolutely exhausted, hoping, and this has not happened here because you're a great lot, but it has happened almost everywhere else. At the end of 2 days, somebody will come up and pin me against a wall and tell me about the first time they saw a glimpse of the divine light when they were being talked to personally by the Archangel Gabriel, who announced to them that they were the most special person in the universe. And at that moment, I just want to shoot myself. No, actually, to be totally honest, I want to shoot them. Because my analyst said I'd made the transition from victim to murderer. So if we're going to get down and honest and gritty and no holds barred and take off our bras and be real about where we are, we have to recognize that our so-called movement is one gelatinous mess of marzipan with no cohesion, no coherence, no real guts, no real passion yet, and that this is what we have desperately to aim for if we're going to have a hope in heaven of really turning this nightmare around. So, the third thing that these groups have, and this is very important, they have systems of holding each of the persons in the groups accountable. I've said the terrible word. I'm sorry. I've said the word accountable. Oh God, it's like masturbating in public to say accountable to a New Age group. Not that you are, of course, but a free, beautiful, holy thinkers of the free, ecumenical, universal self, or whatever hell you are. If you say to somebody in the so-called spiritual Renaissance movement, if you say you're going to do this, you're going to bloody well do this. You're actually going to go out there and you're going to do the best you can until it's actually accomplished. You're not going to suddenly say that the Archangel Gabriel turned up and said it wasn't in your Akashic records to do this, and it wasn't something that suited your aura to do this because you thought you had a blue aura, but actually you've got an orange aura, and actually doing anything doesn't suit your orange aura. You know what I'm talking about. If you try and organize a group of the New Age, spiritual Renaissance, ecumenical, universalist, interfaith, interspiritual movement, if you try, and I have tried, and you see the result before you. I have tried. What you will get is a lot of people with massive spiritual egos who want to appear to be advanced to each other, but who don't want to do any of the bloody work and who don't actually have the courage and the guts and the stamina and the nous and the practicality and the pragmatic heft to actually hold each other accountable for what they said they would do. Anybody who's ever tried to organize anything in any of the new churches or any of the new movements or any of the NGOs or any of the Occupy cells will just fall on the floor with gratitude at what I have just said and recognize it. We are seriously fuked, as my granny used to say. Are you following me? Are you following me? Not me, but are you following what I'm saying? Are you recognizing your faces in this? Because I recognize my face in this. And I recognize that as long as we remain unserious about sacred practice, as long as we don't have that passion in our belly really goading us every day to get up and do something, as long as we cultivate private visions of enlightenment that stress detachment as the goal, as long as we go on being unaccountable for our actions, and as long as we stay totally averse to joining together in humility because we feel that we've achieved such a high level that we can't possibly be with Cynthia or Basil because their version of the Dhammapada is not the right version. We haven't got our hope in heaven of getting anything done. And we'll just have wonderful weekends in which we'll feel great. We won't do any of the practices that are given to us. We'll watch Andrew Harvey or the Dalai Lama or somebody else on the TV and we think we're doing something and actually we're handing the whole world over to the dark. This is the biggest shadow of all, which we're talking about right now. So you have to have the passion of a terrorist, but dedicated to love. You have to have the intensity and purpose of a fundamentalist, but dedicated to a universal vision of brotherhood. And you have to have the organizing power and accountability of a corporation dedicated to the deconstruction of the corporate nightmare to have a chance against an evil this strong. You don't meet the Nazis with flower power, and you don't meet the global financial elite with all of its massive power of destruction and manipulation by disorganization, narcissism, self-absorption, and a few dog-eared copies of Rumi in the wrong translation because it's so rarely mined from the sales. You've got to wake up. We've got to wake up. And it doesn't mean that you have the killer instinct of the terrorist. It means you have that passion in your belly. It doesn't mean that you have the fanaticism of the fundamentalist, but it means that you're prepared to give as much for your vision of universal brotherhood and sisterhood and justice and harmony with the animals, all the things that you and I say we believe, with the same degree of commitment. And it doesn't mean that you have to use your powers of organization to deaden and control and sterilize and castrate and dominate and exploit like the corporations, but you bloody well better be as really down home and organized as them if you're going to have a hope of ever deconstructing the nightmare that they are imposing upon the planet. Or say sayonara world right now. Say, bye-bye Amazon. Say, bye-bye seas, bye-bye white lion, bye-bye billions and billions of human beings, bye-bye. And then say, bye-bye, I'm so sorry. I preferred my comfortable, individualistic, private, pseudo-mystical, pseudo-path and my liberal, self-pleasing, vague attempts at service to actually turning up at the moment when the mother is on her knees with tears of blood streaming down her face, saying to us, when will you get real about me and help me help you by getting it together? I don't want to go on by just, I'm enjoying myself too much, as you can probably tell, but I'm not doing this because I want to get a hernia, although j'adore les hernias. I'm doing this because I am trying to get through to you the extremity of the situation and the immense shadow of our narcissism, and how dangerous it now is for the planet and for us. And am I getting through to you? Yes. Really? Because you know we're not in the, I'm part of this too, we're all part of this. Rami was saying yesterday to me, he said, and here's a man who's written 24 books, and who's a tremendous teacher, and who is indefatigable. You're saying, am I doing enough? What does all this mean? Teaching, 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 writing, writing, writing. Is it really changing anybody? And I felt such love for him, because that's the question I asked myself. Does it really change anybody for me to get up in the middle of the night and take the plane and give everything I have when they're not doing any of the practices, when they don't seem to read anything that I write? They say they read it, but they don't do anything with it. What am I supposed to do knowing what I know? What is he supposed to do knowing what he does? What are you supposed to do knowing what you know? It's a very challenging question. And we have to be brave enough to ask it, and to ask it again and again and again and again, so that it pierces us and so that it makes us really conscious. And I wrestled with this. I studied hard, and I wrestled with this question. And then I went to see some nuns in Ohio. Now, one of the things that, if you are a lover of Catholicism, and I'm not a lover of the church, but of course I love the Christian mystical tradition very, very much, is that the real kick-ass people in the church aren't those boys who are too busy fiddling with the choir boys, oy vey, or dancing about in all of those fancy robes that they wear while condemning homosexuals. Have you ever seen a swishy a lot of queens in your whole life? And as for Ratzinger with his red Gucci shoes and his naps with a 36-year-old Swiss gendarme, I'm just jealous. It's true, it's true, it's true.
About the shoes or?
No, darling, about the 35-year-old Swiss guard. My shadow, my shadow, my shadow. It's not the boys' club. It's the amazingly brave, feisty, demeaned, degraded, humiliated women of the church. These nuns made out of tungsten and wire and fire and chewing gum and sweat and tar. These incredible women who have gone on, going on, doing such unchristian things like feeding the poor. Or actually turning up when the environment is threatened. You'll never see one of those swishy bishops turning up. It'll be one of those old wiry nuns who'll be standing there shivering in the rain and getting arrested. Because they love Jesus. And they know what Jesus' message is, which is feed the poor and change the world and stand up and be just and witness for those who have no voice. And they do it. And these are the people who the Pope is now trying to silence. They never fail, the boys' club. They never fail. They just go on killing beauty and power, the real power. Up theirs is what I say. And auction those red shoes, Ratzinger. And feed a few 100,000 Indians on a Sunday sometime. Hear, hear. So, my favorite group is this group in Ohio. And my favorite nun is Sister Rosa, because Sister Rosa is in her 80s. She's black. She's been arrested 82 times, which is a record. And Sister Rosa, although she's tiny, makes Hillary Clinton look like a mouse. She is one nuclear broad, and she's in a wheelchair, and the most terrifying sight to the politicians of Ohio and the policemen of Ohio and the corporations of Ohio is a diminutive, half-crippled, black 84-year-old nun who is seen wheeling always to where she is needed and has an amazing gift for hogging the camera, because she knows that her best angle in the camera is the left one. And when she gets in front of the camera, and she always gets in front of the camera, because these nuns are not going to be put off by some punts from New York. They're going to beat them away and get in front of the camera and say, this is an outrage and we have got to stop it, and this is how we're going to stop it. And all of you who love the Lord and who love anything, you can love anything, but just love it, you are all going to do something with me. And I am Sister Rosa, and I am saying this, and immediately, because she has such authority, the authority of an absolutely passionate life, people bow and they do what that amazing broad says. And that's the kind of old queen that I'm going to be. But not in a wheelchair. No, no, no. I'm going to, well, I mean, unless it's a sort of wheelchair that elevates and comes down and swims open. I mean, it can have bells and whistles, and then I might consider it. But I was talking to her and I said, what the hell are we going to do with this lot? I said, I mean, Jesus could come, Ramakrishna could come. They'd say, oh, I saw Ramakrishna last week. Oh, that was great. It was fabulous. What about, and I hear Rumi's coming next week. Smorgasbord, smorgasbord, hop, 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 hop. A little there, a little here. Consumerism galore, right? Yes. You know what I'm talking about. Let's take our bras off. Let's just do it. And Sister Rosa said, you know, I don't know either, but I want you to pray on it, because, you know, there is someone who will know and he'll tell you. And I roll my eyes, you know, because Sister Rosa has an intimate relationship with the Lord, and the Lord may never refuse Sister Rosa, but there have been many times where I've asked the Lord for things and they haven't arrived quite on time. So she said, well, have another drink, because Sister Rosa loves red wine. And she said, go now and pray in the chapel and ask him what can help. So I did. I thought, well, it's worked for her, and I'm going to really ask him. What can we do with a group of people who pretend to be engaged but are doing nothing and are totally incapable of organizing their way out of a collapsing, burning building, and are sitting in the burning building on their futons listening to appalling beige New Age music? What can we do? Lord, help me. And I fell asleep, and I saw two things. I saw two banners in the sky. And on one banner was written, Networks of Grace. And on the other was written, Joy is the power. Joy is the power. And he has my Joy is the Power t-shirt, And for $400, you can have a signed copy of that T-shirt. And nobody but you and a few thousand others will ever have it. And I understood that the way to organize this grassroots revolution of love in action was to take the best tunes from the old boy, the old dark one, who always knows how to do the best. If you want to find out how to get through, don't go and talk to an angel. The angel will give you the strength and the protection. Go and talk to one of those really intelligent devils down there inside you. Just go and talk to them. Because they will teach you the wisdom of the shadow. Talk to them. And they think we are hopeless, and they're laughing at us. They laugh at our seriousness because they know it's not real. And so what I got was that networks of grace had to be organized with those three things. It had to be a small group between 6 and 10 or 15, and it had to be a group of people who cared really passionately about something they were heartbroken about, animals or old people, or the way in which the Christians are betraying Christ. Whatever your cause is, find others who are passionate about it and link up with them and start meeting together and start praying together and start infusing yourself with the passion of the divine universal Mother, Father, and start rousing that holy passion in you together and inspiring each other. And they have to, this group of between 6 to 15 people, they have to also start choosing real projects in the real world. I don't mean we're going to get together Easter eggs for the local orphanage. No, that's a good thought. But it's not really enough when the environment is burning to death. Or that they're going to make pottery for the mother. No. No more bad pottery. Or they're going to dance universal dances of would-be peace for the mother in flowery dresses, except those that come from Fabu. The rest of them are rubbish. No, I mean serious projects which seriously help serious pain in the real community. I mean things like homeless people, people who have no medical insurance, mothers who have to work 4 jobs to feed their children, young gay men who are dying lonely of AIDS because they've been abandoned by their parents. People who have no money because the bankers who totally destroyed the world are still riding high in Wall Street and have ruined 40 million people in America. I mean, real people suffering real stuff. Be serious projects about seriously helping in serious ways these people. Our brothers, our sisters. It doesn't matter what religion they belong to, what skin they belong to, whether they're fundamentalists or Muslims or fanatics or whatever. They are suffering. And we will have no credibility at all to her or to anybody in this world. And nothing will happen and no one will join any movement of anything like sacred activism until you and I start doing that kind of work together, humbly, daily, gruelingly, in the real world, pooling all our energies and resources and networks in networks of grace to get a grassroots revolution of love in action going.
Yeah.
More. It's so, no, it isn't, I know it's in the applaud. What I want you to really think deeply, feel deeply about this. So I started a big website, Networks of Grace, and there are networks of grace, I'll take questions in a second, there are networks of grace all over the world. And in the last part of my book, you will see a whole law devoted to the creation of networks of grace, and you will see my suggestions for creating it and governing it. So if you have loved what I have said, and if it has touched you, please, when I come back to Nashville, which I'm going to do every single week, for ever higher fees. No. When I come back to Nashville, please don't make me put on my gentlemanly English wry smile when you say you haven't done the practices and you haven't bothered to do anything to create a networks of grace. Because by that time, my darlings, it will be much too late. It will already be almost totally too late. All I can do, and all any teacher at this time can do, is to cook the food as best they can, and that I have done. And if I died tonight, I would meet my beloved, and I would say to him, nobody listened, but I did my best, and I really cooked the food, and I laid out the plates, and I put the knives and forks in the right places, and I gave the recipes to make the dishes, and I did it wearily, but unwearyingly, for year after year after year after year after year after year after year. I hope that's not the speech that I shall make when I get up there. I hope the speech that I shall make will go something like this. At the last fucking moment, some of them actually woke up. Could you believe? And some of these actually listened to the results of my and the many other teachers who are teaching in this area, real down-home instructions and guidance, and actually ran with it because actually they really realized where we were. It must have been your doing, beloved, because sure as hell I couldn't do it. And His Holiness couldn't do it. And the great wise Rami Shapiro couldn't do it. And all the wonderful Caroline Macy's and Marianne Williamsons couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. Because now you have got to do it. So do it. And make me a happy 60-year-old. Thank you. Did I offend anybody? Will I have emails? I won't read them. You know I'm talking the truth. Nobody talks to you like this because they don't love you enough. They want your money. I don't want your money. I did want your money, but you never gave me any, so I associated. You know the story, Rami. I'm letting the chips fall where they may now, because for me it's very much too late to do anything except just tell the truth. And you know I'm not telling it out of disrespect to you. I'm telling it out of anguish for the world. And because I know that if you did do it, you'd be so much more alive, and so much happier, and so much more vibrant, and so much more truly divine. So I know it's worth it. Because the one thing I know about my life, a complete failure, though in some ways I think it is, but I mean, better people than I, like Jesus and Buddha, also failed, so it's okay with me. The one thing I do know about my life is that doing this work with your whole guts and passion and heart will not make you rich and will not get you necessarily on Oprah. but it will give you phenomenal energy, and it will give you the peace beyond understanding and the joy beyond reason. And I think that's a good bargain, don't you? So I hope I've modeled that for you, and I hope you can see in me the reflection of the faces that I see coming alive in you. So bless you. And above all, do the practices. You can't go into this great storm without really constantly working on yourself in a sacred way. Marion Woodman, my darling friend, who is the great 82-year-old Jungian whom I made a film with, I had the honor to take her through her life. My life seems to be taking octogenarians through their lives. I love it. Any octogenarians you know who want their life story told? I love old people. I plan to become one of the feistiest ones imaginable. And she said to me, she said, when are they going to understand that going into this chaos without being armed by deep spiritual practice and profound mystical knowledge is like whooping into a feather style dressed in a paper tutu? It's not a good idea. Idea. In fact, it's a suicidal idea, because the time has come for the real new age to be born, which is not the age of crystals and aliens and rainbow ships and a book with a title similar to The Secret, but the age when millions of people at last get serious about the universal vision and passion of the mother, and serious about putting it into practice, and serious about organizing themselves on a global scale to embody a new way of being and doing everything. And on that, the whole future of humanity depends. So, let's get going. And let's end with my favorite prayer, since I'm now one of the 9 sages. It's wonderful how you can fool nearly all of the people all of the time, right? But I'm sure everybody who's ever been a decent teacher thought that, don't you think? Yeah, I do. I'm sure Jesus thought, they think I'm God. What can I do about this? I can make a few people well, and I can walk on water, but God creates 72 universes before breakfast. Right? It's so funny, we're all such idiots. But we're God's idiots. For some reason, she seems to be madly in love with us. She is, that's so. But she's not so in love with us that she's not going to wipe us off the face of the earth if we continue to kill everything and just sip our lattes while the Amazon burns. So I want to read to you, and I want you to bow your head to your heart. I want you to read to you the great prayer of the sacred activist, Saint Francis of Assisi's prayer, because I'm so pleased to see that he's on the same list as myself. I am not worthy to wash St. Francis's underpants, let alone be on the list of the 9 sages that include him. Let's all just get real about the great holy ones. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, chutzpah. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Armed with that prayer, we can go forward through anything in the joy of the living one. So we'll see each other tomorrow for one last meeting. And I want you to do that practice tonight. And I will know, because I'm totally enlightened, who hasn't done that practice. Because there's an invisible aura that goes on around people, which only the enlightened can see. My mother used to say that if I lied, my ears went green. So I used to lie in the mirror and they never went green. So I knew she was full of you-know-what. I want you to do the practice tonight before you sleep of lying on your bed and really asking yourself that question. What breaks my heart the most? What breaks my heart the most? Really explore that. And begin to imagine yourself